Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Welcome everybody to the 89th episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Future History Now event that just took place here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm your host, Greg Greenlee. And if this is your first time listening, you can check us out at blacksandtechnology.net. We are also on the Twitters, and that's at Black and Technology. That's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. We're also on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/Blacks and Technology. And we have an ever-growing LinkedIn group. So just search for Blacks and Technology. You'll find us. And if you're on Twitter right now, any of you have questions for our guests, tweet them using the hashtag BigTechTalk, BITTECHTALK. Blacks and Technology is a tech-focused community and media organization. We're focused on increasing diversity in technology. We're always focused on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, or if you have any general inquiries related to sponsorship, send us an email. Contact us at blacksandtechnology.net. We're going to talk about the Future History Now event here in a second, but we do have a couple of announcements. We just attended Elasticon conference in San Francisco, California. We had a good time there. Shout out to the Elastic company for sponsoring some tickets for us, and that we were able to hand out to various members in our community. And we met some new people there and made some connections. So that was great. That happened last week. And coming up, we have a couple of conferences coming up. One in May. We're partnering again with Self. And that's happening May 20th through the 21st in Detroit, Michigan. And Self Conference is a mix of fantastic tech presentations and insightful tech talks in downtown Detroit. And it's 2 days of mobile, web, hardware, software process, and team talks to help you expand your knowledge and meet other technically minded folk and immerse yourself in Detroit's tech renaissance. Also coming up in April 15th and 16th in Seattle, Washington is Closure West. So those of you who are interested in Closure West and the Closure programming language, hit us up. We have a partnership with them, and we're giving out tickets for that as well. We're also doing the same thing for Self Conference. So we do have a few tickets for those that are interested in attending Self. So hit us up, contact us at blacksandtechnology.net. Let us know why you're interested, and we'll be sure to get those tickets over to you. And another thing, jobs. We do have a job posted on our job site for a front-end designer for a company called Sparkbox. They're out of Dayton, Ohio. So go check the website out, look at our jobs board, and check out the job there. And what's next? Oh, okay. So we're gonna jump right into this. Joining us tonight, and she is actually one of the organizers of this event. Hey, it's Natasia. I'm going to mess this up. Is it Mailahollo?
Mailahollo, yes.
Oh, okay. You did pretty well. She is the CEO, lead programmer at Wyzerr. This is Natasia's second startup. Her first startup was a hyper-local social network for college students called Sooligan. And prior to being an entrepreneur, she studied law with a focus on intellectual property. So I want to welcome Natasia to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk about, before we actually get into the questions that we had arranged here, let's talk about the Future History Now event. That event just happened here in downtown Cincinnati at the Centrifuge building, and it was incredible. A great turnout.
Yes.
What did we have? What was it? Over 150?
At least 150
right,
for sure. I think the capacity is like 200 in the beer hall. So we definitely had people standing up and kind of in and out of chairs. So I think at least 150 for sure.
Okay. Yeah, and I did Periscope some of that. Didn't get to get the whole thing, but periscoped a good portion of it. We had some great speakers.
Yes, you did.
Some great entrepreneurs and some people that are involved in the tech ecosystem here in Cincinnati. So tell me, how did this whole thing come about, Future History Now?
So we have a group here called the Black Founders Group. It started about 9 months ago when Wyzerr moved to town. My startup moved to town, and kind of around, it was serendipity, I guess. And so, or I guess around the same time that we moved here, Candace was having conversations with some of the startup leaders around town.
And Candace is Candace Peters.
Candace Peters from
founder of Hello Parent.
Yes. Yeah. So Candace, Hello Parent, was having conversations with some of the other, I think Rodney Williams from Listener, about the lack of women-owned founders that are of color. Right. And so she took it up to the brandery, and he said, wait, actually we have, a founder and all minority team coming to the brandery. And so she organized a meetup in June, and then that became kind of a monthly thing that we did with other founders in Cincinnati. And then we realized, all of our startups in this group were doing really, really well. Most of us are funded. A couple of us went through Techstars or went through accelerators, and a lot of us was thriving in the startup field. And when you look at the landscape across the country, that's definitely not the case when it comes to minority-led startups. It's so hard for minority-owned startups to raise funding and get into some of these accelerators. We're definitely not represented. But here in one area, there's so many of us here. And so from that, we kind of decided that we needed to do more. And either was, inspire more people to start startups or bring other entrepreneurs of color here. And that's actually kind of what catalyzed this event, was just bringing awareness to, kind of the ecosystem, and that letting people know that we're here. And if you're a minority founder, that we want to support you. And if you're thinking of starting an idea, we want to support you. And if you're not from Cincinnati, we want you to come here.
Right. And this is Cincinnati, everybody, just in case we're pioneering this right now. So check us out. So tell us a little bit about the actual event. What was the purpose of the event? What you want to achieve?
Yeah, so we really wanted to bring attention to diversity and inclusion in tech. And so, there was an article that was published by the Inquirer that interviewed several of us founders about what we thought that looked like here in Cincinnati. And Derek made a point that, and he said it so well, because I think this is often what I think. Derek Brazil, he's one of the founders of Mortar, and a great program here in Cincinnati that helps minority entrepreneurs that are not necessarily in tech. And so he made a point, and he said, look past the quantity, but look at the quality. And so, that's really what this event, the Future History Now, is just, look past, how little of us there is now, but look at what we're doing. And again, it was just really about inspiring other entrepreneurs and letting people know that this is a problem, not just here in Cincinnati, but all over the country. But I think we are finding the solutions, and there's enough of us here, and not just minority founders, but also business leaders here, and people like the Brandery and Centrifuge that have stepped up and said, hey, we want to address this, and we're going to help make it better.
All right. And that's a pretty amazing accomplishment, this event period, considering that the group as a whole has only been together for 9 months.
Yeah. And
the time that it took for you all to organize this event, when we were just talking about this, a month and a half.
Yes.
And they were able to get the mayor of Cincinnati to come down here and speak, and several notable people in the business ecosystem here in Cincinnati, as well as some tech entrepreneurs. So, yeah, it was great. I was pretty impressed. So we kind of didn't even get to this question. I got right into talking about Future History Now. Oh, so kind of real quick, what is the plan for the Black Founders Group and Future History Now? Is this event going to be a recurring event? I know there was a big announcement tonight. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. So there's an So let me step back a little bit. So the mission for this group, it's kind of changed. So initially it started as just a meetup for us to get together and vent about all the things that we deal with as minority founders. And now, it's really become a movement to bring more entrepreneurs of color here. So the vision is really, we want a fund. That's the big goal, is that we want state funding, we want private investments, and we want to be able to bring entrepreneurs here, because I think there's something special and there's a renaissance going here. But we want to also be able to fund them if they come here. And so, that's the ultimate mission and with that fund, we're not only investing in our own, in startups and entrepreneurs, but we're also creating programs and initiatives. So sometimes that might look like incubators and accelerators of our own, or, funding startups to go to these tech conferences and things like that, or investing in like a STEM program or something like that over the summer camps and things like that. So the goal is really to create a pipeline of entrepreneurs, and especially in tech, here in the community. And I missed, what was the last part of your question?
What was the goals for future history now? Is this going to be a recurring?
Correct. So I think we're going to continue to have more events, but the big announcement was that Power Moves, which was started in New Orleans and is such a great event. They're able to attract so many great entrepreneurs of color, so many great minority-owned startups from all over the country to these events. And so they went to New Orleans, they went to Detroit, which is actually the one that I participated in, and coincidentally enough, that was the same one that Rodney Williams from Listener participated in. And then they recently, just last week, launched in Miami. And when I tell you, I was blown away by the caliber of startups there. There were so many amazing startups, and it was just so great. I had a really proud moment because it was so great that they were all minority founders, but you look past that and you just look at the ideas and you look at the businesses and you look at the founders, they're just how smart they are. And I was watching actually a video of one of the startup founders, the Bay app. So it's a dating app for blacks and I guess minorities. So the founders, they were just so articulate and they were just so smart. The way they were addressing the issue, and as a minority founder myself, it was just such a proud moment. So we're really excited they're coming here to Cincinnati because they're going to bring with them great startups and great founders, and we're excited that these founders will be able to see kind of what we're growing here in Cincinnati, and hopefully they'll be able to see things like these events that happen when they get here.
So when can we expect that?
This fall.
Really?
Yep.
Very nice.
We're moving pretty quickly.
All right. So usually the introductory question that I usually ask is that we kind of skipped over. But give us a brief description of your background, where you're from, your educational background, your tech background.
Sure. So I grew up in Orange County, California. I did my undergrad at Berkeley. I came in actually as a biochem major, quickly realized that biochem at Berkeley is very different than biochem in high school. So my college roommate was actually taking computer science classes, and I grew up around computers. My brother is an engineer. My sister currently manages engineers, and so I've always seen them build programs and websites and things like that. So I took a class because my roommate was taking a class, and then kind of fell in love with it and kept taking more courses. But I ended up graduating as a legal studies major because I, in the process of that, had taken an elective in legal studies. Well, I had taken an elective, and I picked legal studies and fell in love with the major. Graduated when I was 20, so the plan was to, graduate early, go work for a year, and then go into law school. I ended up working at an intellectual property law firm that specialized in a lot of high-tech patents, and so I fell in love with the job, was there for 3 years, and then went to Georgetown for law school.
All right. So that's right. So law and then computer science. So what actually intrigued you about tech that made you say, I'm going to put law to the side and go into tech?
So why I actually started coding was because I was trying to build my own, and this is before YouTube stars and all of that, but I was actually trying to build my own website where you can, where I can interact with people and things like that. So the idea then was to build my own website. But then eventually I went to legal studies. And then while I was in law school, I was working at this law firm, and we actually represented Samsung in the Apple versus Samsung patent litigation lawsuit. And that was really, I've always worked in tech, and but that was really the turning point to me where I was like, okay, I need to really look at tech. But even before that, I had this idea so I had a dream randomly before I went to law school. So this was 2 months, and I had already put in all my registration paperwork and things like that. But I had a dream about this social network, and it was this app, and I was playing on it, and it was just so amazing in my dream. And when I woke up, all I could remember was that it was hyper local and it was digital word of mouth. The idea that you didn't have to be friends with anyone, but you can kind of read their mind. And it was this digital, and then what it came out to be was this live stream of thoughts that were categorized as either positive thoughts, which are raves, and then negative thoughts, which were rants, and then questions, just inquiries about the world around you. And so I thought it was fascinating, and I told my best friend about it at the time, and she was like, yeah, that's a really great idea. But she was headed to Brazil to work. She was still in college, and so she was headed to Brazil to work on a research project, and I was headed to law school. So I kind of put it on the back burner and worked on it a little bit. But then when I got this job and kind of saw just how vast the tech world, and I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. Definitely, the plan was always to be an attorney. And so I kind of saw just how much was going on in tech through my research for Samsung and stuff, that I was like, we really need to do this. We need to focus on it. So my second semester at Georgetown, I moved out of my beautiful apartment and moved into the dining room of a classmate. And
so did you do that to save money?
Yeah, no, I used the money to pay for the development of the app.
Oh, wow.
And do that. So I was working on that on the side. We launched it that spring at Berkeley, and then after that I realized I couldn't do law school and I couldn't do entrepreneurship at the same time, so I had to pick one. And at the same time, I was doing research about finding investors, and then I found out about these accelerator programs and thought, this sounds pretty amazing. They're going to pay you and they're going to help you build a company, and so we applied to a bunch of different accelerators, settled on the ARC Challenge in Arkansas because it was the first first class. So we figured they're going to do a lot, to kind of push the class. And there was a cash prize, $150,000 cash prize at the end of the program. And it was in the area where Walmart is headquartered. And so we were and most of the mentors are all from Walmart. So this is going to be great to get connected. So we moved to Arkansas, and we got into the program, and we moved to Arkansas, and I kind of never looked back at law.
It's worked out.
Yeah, now it is.
Right.
When I was sitting there watching, looking at my Facebook, and all my friends that graduated and became attorneys are eating at 5-star restaurants, and I'm eating cup noodles, and you're kind of what happened here?
So, take it back just a little bit to your time in school. So, you enroll in these comp sci courses, right? So, what was your experience like as a woman? And what advice can you give to others kind of looking to enroll in computer science?
So honestly, when I was looking at this question, and I was looking back, and this might sound really ignorant, but I never felt like there was something wrong, that I was only one of only 2 or 3 women in this class. It's just to me, it seemed normal that there was only 1 or 2 women in these classes.
Right. To be honest, I felt like that, going to tech conferences early on in my career. I was never made to feel outcasted during that time.
Right.
So it never kind of dawned on me that, like, hey, I would see maybe a couple of, people of color at these tech conferences. But I think that's kind of tied to the perception of tech in general, right? And who's visible in the tech scenes, who do we grow up seeing, and who do we even grow up idolizing as like tech entrepreneurs, and all those people are faces, are pretty much white males, and so when you get into these environments, you just kind of feel like that's what it is, and that's how it is, that's how it's supposed to be. So sometimes it doesn't. It took me a couple of years until I kind of had that aha moment, like, hey, for me, and I always tell people this, it was, you know what, I'm having a great time here. This is a great environment to learn. If only there were more black people here. Like, they would be able to experience what I'm experiencing right now. So, and like I said, it took a couple of years for me to kind of have that moment.
Yeah, so I mean, exactly, like, in my classes, like, I never felt like there was something wrong, or it was like, it was bad that I was the only person. Like, tech looked like white males. And, so I think it might have been abnormal if there was more women in the classes, or there were more, people of color, so I think going through the classes, like, I never felt like, I was treated differently, although, like, looking back, people definitely didn't interact with me, but I never made, I never felt like I was, like you said, kind of casted out or anything like that. But I do remember that, like, my instructor at the time, one of my instructors, he was a graduate student, and he had just gotten hired by Google, and so he really was just trying to wrap up this semester, I guess, at Berkeley, and so he was just trying to get out. And I remember, like, so I would always ask him questions, and I was always, like, getting feedback on some of my code, and I remember him just saying, like, God, Natasia, like, why are you here? And I remember that, and like, looking back, like, I guess at the moment, I just felt like maybe he was, and I think I made excuses for him that he was just frustrated and he was tired, but, like, in context now, it was kind of like, this is, it felt very like a man's world, and I mean, you can take the comment however it was. I don't really know what it was meant, what was meant behind it, but looking back, like, it definitely felt like, he just expected, and in that class, actually, I was only one of 2 women, in that class, and so, I guess now that I'm a founder and I'm going to these events, like, looking for connections or networking, it feels a lot different than when I was coding, in the Bay. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Going to not even just the tech conferences, just being in a career, you'll have people who would. So, for instance, one of my very first jobs, I guess, in tech was in tech retail. I worked for a Micro Center as a sales associate. So you would get people that would come up to you and ask you questions about some certain adapter or accessory or whatever. And so, like, they come up to you and they're like, hey, I'm trying to, I've got a serial printer, and I need an adapter to turn this into a parallel port or something like that. And you'd be like, oh yeah, well, here's an adapter. This will work for you. And right after they ask you, they will turn to your colleague who was white and ask them the very same thing.
Wow.
Right, like, within feet of you. It's not like they're, it was like, they'll look at it, they'll look at the package, and they'll turn to somebody else and say, hey, I'm looking for, they'll give them the same exact answer. Yeah. But at the time, you kind of just like, well, whatever. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But now when you look back on it, it's like, oh, he was really second guessing my knowledge. Right. So yeah, I've dealt with that, and you look back on it now, and you start to see, like, those type of, I guess, those type of situations that happen as you were coming up. So, what advice would you not? So you say you didn't really you didn't really experience like some of the kind of negative type of behavior that can come from an environment like that. But what advice would you give to women who are looking to go into computer science?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't say go for it, because I think, tech is a huge industry. Then you definitely want to get involved in some way, at least learn the basics. So that, and I think that's really important as part of kind of what we're pushing with like some of the STEM programs, is just, making sure code is part of the education.
Right.
But so some of my advice, like coding wise, I kept this notebook. So, like our textbooks had example codes, and whenever I would see code that I knew that I was going to use a lot, and even boilerplate, sometimes like when you're coding, even instructors will tell you can just copy and paste it into the code. But I actually would handwrite them because they would help me memorize them, remember them better.
Right.
So I had these notebooks that I would just constantly rewrite like all the code, especially ones that I knew that I was going to be using a lot of, so that, you're not just being lazy about it, and you're remembering it better. And then another thing is like the text editors. There's a lot of text editors that are super savvy, and they automate a lot of the code stuff. I would say use a basic, like something like Notepad even to start off with when you're first beginning, because then you have to actually type out all the code yourself, and you don't get that help. And I think that learning that really early on, that was something that like my brother taught me. Learning that early on really helped, because and I felt like my syntax and things were like a lot better. It was a lot cleaner, and so it was easier to find error and mistakes because I knew exactly what I was writing. That wasn't copying, pasting from somewhere else, or automating.
Right. And so I don't use any type of now I can't think of the name of it. I use VI for like all programming, so I don't use like an environment or anything like that, a framework. And I used to actually use Code Academy, but Code Academy is similar to kind of what you were talking about, the copy and pasting. They do a lot of the code for you. Now you might have to fill in a little bit here and there, but I found that it never actually allowed the code or what I'm trying to learn to stick.
Right.
So I actually started. I've been doing it for a while now. Coursera. They have courses on there where they have like video, but then at the end of the course they'll have like this exercise that you have to. They'll tell you what the output and things like that they want, but you have to write all the code, and that requires you to do a lot of recall.
Right.
And I was reading this book called. I think it's called Make It Stick, and they talk about the best ways to learn is recall. So it's not rereading something over and over again or anything like that, because that always gives you like the illusion of learning.
Right.
And that's kind of similar to just copying and pasting. You actually think that I know what that code is for, but you don't actually learn the syntax and everything that behind that. So that's what, I use a regular text editor. It's nothing fancy. I don't use any type of environments. And so that's good advice for people. So you launched Sooligan.
Yes.
Right. So tell us, and you gave us a brief description of the idea behind it. So what did you learn from that experience being a first-time founder?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard, like I think when you start out building an app, you have to believe in your idea, and you have to be passionate about your idea, and you're willing to do whatever it takes. But you always look at the ideal situation, in our, because it was an app, we wanted 1 million downloads, and so people think it's easy, okay, we're just going to do this and it's going to be a great app and it's going to go viral and we're going to have 1 million downloads and everything's going to be great. And it definitely is not like that. Like, I think it was so hard. You know, we worked on it for 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 3.5 years up until the summer of 2014. And that's when I just kind of decided to walk away from it for good. And, you know, we were kind of forced to walk away from it. And that's when I started Wyzerr, because of kind of the failure of Sooligan. But, you know, like building an app, and I think at the time it was because we were dealing with, we were a social media app, and we were competing against like Twitter and Facebook. And even though we were completely different in concept, when people heard social media, they're like, oh my gosh, I already have Facebook, I have Twitter, like why would I want this app? And it was completely different. And I think like now, like there's this, you know, there's app fatigue. So I think maybe now it might even be harder to launch an app, in my opinion. You know, like there's so many apps, and so just, you know, look for your value points and try to make that really stick and find a niche. I think that's probably like the key thing, is really finding a niche, because what we did wrong was that we were trying to go for the mass markets. And I think like if we had focused on maybe like just college students, or maybe just people that just moved into a city, and you know, we actually kept getting requests from like corporations who are relocating employees, and they wanted an app to put into the hands of these new employees and help them kind of navigate the new city. And we actually didn't go and look into it. Like we just was like, oh no, we're gonna go to we're gonna go to the mass market and everybody's gonna use our app, you know. So we completely ignored it, and that's actually why we started Wyzerr. Because looking back on that failure, I'm like, we should have listened to the customers. And then, you know, like when we looked at what are the ways people listen to the customers, surveys, and like the surveys are completely broken, and so that's actually what sparked the idea for Wyzerr.
Very cool. So I had a question there, now I forgot it. So before we begin talking about the next startup, which is Wyzerr, I want to touch on diversity in the tech startup space. Why is diversity important to you personally? So
I was in a think tank when I was in DC, and the topic was actually, you know, our theme, our focus was on the drivers that perpetuate poverty in certain communities. And so when I look at diversity and inclusion in tech and why it's important to me, I really feel, I look at the socio-economic impact. So, you know, I think the average tech salary of an individual in tech is $85,000, and the median annual income is a little bit over $40,000. That's a huge gap, because that's household versus an individual in tech. And so when you think about like the drivers or some of these disparities in social inequality, and then also what's perpetuating poverty and these cycles, it's income. You know, so people with high income, they're sending their kids to better schools, they have access to opportunities, they have access to better food, so they're living better and they're living longer and they're living healthy. Whereas people without this type of income, the kids are doing who knows what just to stay alive. And so when I look at tech, I look at, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and some of these issues, like between communities, and I think about like what would happen if everyone was really equal. Like people had same incomes, and people could afford same access to education, and people had all these great opportunities. Like, would we wipe out some of these, like eliminate some of these issues, and like, you know, the communities? And so to me, that's like what's important here. And and I think like if we really want to move change in that direction, we have to level the playing field. So something like really interesting also came up like during, you know, kind of like the past few years and months, as some of these like police brutality and issues came up, was that so a lot of my friends are all lawyers, you know, and so like, you know, when they were when kind of all this was happening, like, there was a huge discussion amongst us about going after jobs that that in their, well, what we were discussing was that actually made a difference. And so you could be pushing all these initiatives to change the law, and you could do all these things to like create these like new patterns and new laws or whatever in the community. But if you didn't have people in like the judge's position, and you didn't have people on the Supreme Court, and you didn't have people that are actually making the decisions on these case by case basis, then none of it matters. Like, people break the law all the time, so you're really we're pushing all these like changes in laws and all these like things, but if your judge says that this is a mistrial, and your judge throws out the case, and the judge says then like these law changes don't mean anything. And so, and again, it's just about evening and leveling the playing field for everyone. And I think that's, to me, tech is a huge driver, possibility in making that.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was at Elasticon over last week, and I was sitting at one of the tables, and I just started thinking about a number that the CEO of Elasticon, it was the number of attendees at that conference, right? And so I took that number, and I took a low from all the engineers that were there. I figured, a handful of them, or a big majority of them, probably come from some type of tech hub, right? Mm-hmm. So they're probably at least making $100,000 a year, right? So I took that as the low, and $100,000 times 1,800 is $180 million sitting right there among 1,800 people in that conference. Right. And that's just one conference, right? And I was just thinking about that, just the numbers there. And I was like, do you know how many lives could be changed just from being in tech? Right. And maybe you don't start out at that number, but I was mentoring some people from the Perscola's program here in Cincinnati, and they do entry level tech training. Mm-hmm. So these people go from, making $9 an hour to making like $45,000 an hour as an entry level desktop support person or something like that. That's life changing for them, right? Yeah. But to go from that to 100,000 plus, that changes a lot. Oh yeah. And so I just sat there thinking about it, like, this is, we have to push harder, and we got to do more, because. And out of all those people that were there were probably maybe a handful of minorities there. Yeah. And the rest of them were, white males, white females, but a majority of white males. And, that just had my mind thinking, like, this could change the lives of so many different people. So, I definitely agree on that aspect. So, what's next? So, what as a woman of color, what challenges have you had to overcome just in the tech startup scene? Yeah, I mean,
there's so many. So, I generally try to stay away from talking about like my experiences, because I never want to detract from what Wyzerr is doing, the progress, and kind of what we've been able to accomplish. But I will say that it's definitely has not we walked away from a $500,000 investment last year at the beginning of the year, and kudos to my co-founders, who I just absolutely love so much, because they were okay with it. That's huge. Yeah, but what happened from that was because I already felt like they didn't actually, the investors was just a bad fit. They didn't believe in us. They didn't, I didn't think that they really understood what we were doing, but everyone else was telling them this is such a great idea, and they kind of felt like, okay, well, let's test them. And I feel like some of the things they asked us to do, they would never have asked other people to do. And I think it was because I'm a woman, and I'm a woman of color. And at first, you kind of ignore it, because you're kind of like, oh, this must be how everybody else gets treated. They're going to want you to to prove yourself. So, I kind of kept going with the motions, like with all the BS. Like I just kept putting up with it. And then someone on my team said, one of the investors asked her, is anyone in your family, she's also a person of color, and she said, he asked her, is anyone in your family like on drugs? Because if we invest in you, will you use the money to help them? And so after you grab that person by their throat. And then there was some other, there was a series of comments, but that, like, when I, and she didn't tell me because she didn't want that to be the reason why we didn't get funded. And that's the kind of team that, they're so loyal that they, like, I have been so blessed. Like, I have such a great team, but, like, they were so loyal and they were so focused on the vision that they, like, there was a lot of other comments that were made that was just unacceptable, that were not okay. And I found out there was comments made, to some of my other founders, and but they just kept it to themselves. And then, but when I heard that, like, I was like, we're done. Like, we're not going to do it. And then kind of like everything else was put into perspective, all the other things that was happening. And so we just walked away. And when I told my co-founders, like, we're just going to leave. We're not going to take the money. They were like, okay, like, we'll figure it out. Like, we're 100% behind you. They didn't question it. Like, it was just, it's done. So.
Well, kudos to them, because you never know what putting money in front of somebody how that would change a person. What they will allow themselves to kind of tolerate from something like that. But wow, like where do people get off even? No, that's mind-boggling to me. Like when I hear stuff like that, it's just like, why?
Like
why is that a thing? Why would you, as a person? And I'm guessing this is coming from a funder, so obviously, you have some smarts about you, or otherwise you wouldn't be in that position. And why would you think that that's an okay statement to make to anybody, let alone, to a person of color?
And it was disguised as due diligence, which is like, I was like, that's not due diligence. That's not due diligence. But it was disguised as due diligence. So.
Wow. Well, I mean, the good thing is, you kept your integrity. Your team kept their integrity. You walked away. That's. So what would you, out of those challenges, what are some of the most important things that you learned that you can kind of pass on to someone else?
Never do anything for money. I think that's just, you hear it a lot, but it becomes so easy to forget about it when people put a lot of money in front of you, and especially when you're struggling, you don't have anything else, and you don't have, you don't really have, anything to guarantee that someone else is going to put more money in front of you, or someone else is going to invest. So, but I think, like, you definitely have to have integrity, and you have to believe in yourself enough to know that when something's just not a good fit, and you can't make decisions based on money. Like, I think if we had made decisions based on money, we would definitely not be here. And it kind of ties into building a startup. Like, don't build a startup because you want to get rich and because you want to make a lot of money. You build it because you believe in it so much that you can't do anything else.
Right. So it's like this two-way relationship between you and the funder. They have to believe in you, and they have to show that as well.
Exactly.
And it's not just a money play for them.
Exactly. Like my co-founder has this line that he always says, and he's always like, they don't really want to see what we can do. The last thing that they need, and he always says, like, the worst thing they can do is give us a lot of confidence. And because we'll just be out here, like, really doing what we came here to do. And so, like, in our lead investors, like, so we have Brad Zapp, who, as you've heard, like, his fund invested in 53% minority-owned founders. Okay. I think that's, like, that's very, very high. Right. So Brad Zapp and kind of that fund, Kinetic Ventures, they gave us so much confidence. Like, it wasn't even about the money. But they gave us so much confidence to do like what we were doing. Like, before that, we've always believed that we can do it. And we always had these like ideas, but they funded us really quickly. They got us all the introductions that we needed. And then, and I remember this conversation I had with him because like, when you have nothing and all of a sudden you have, a huge amount of money in your bank accounts, like you like almost don't want to touch it. Like the day that we got funded, so I had always told the guys like, when we get funded, we're gonna go have this like great steak dinner at Jeff Ruby's or whatever that steakhouse is there. And we're gonna go do that.
Free plug there.
But like,
see our check.
And the day that the checks cleared, like I was at home making pizza bagels, and Stedman was at home, and my co-founder Bjorn was watching The Avengers in his bedroom. Like we still haven't had a celebratory dinner because like when it happened, like we just couldn't believe it. That it didn't really affect us until a couple of weeks later when my investor sat down with me and said, "Natasia, how much money do you have left?" And I basically still had like 98% of all of it, and he said, if I wanted the money to sit in a bank account, I would have kept it in my bank account. And we would all have kept it in our bank account. We want you to go spend it because we believe that you guys know how to spend it and turn that money into 10x. And so he was like, do it confidently. Like, you don't have to worry about it because if you run out, we'll find more. And when he said that, like, I told my team, and we were kind of like, wow, like he believes in us so much that for someone to say that, to startup founders and stuff, like, then like a month later, we spent a lot of money. And he was like, wait, hold on, tone it down. You guys need a CFO, but I mean, giving us that confidence was like life changing because we went and we spent the money and we actually made a lot of money really quickly.
Wow.
So, count the commas. Numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers don't lie.
Right. So, what would you say as a founder are your greatest achievement so far? Because there's still a lot more to come.
Oh yeah.
So far.
There's so much more to do, but as a founder, honestly, it's job creation. Like creating jobs. Like I go home. And someone was asking me yesterday, like, how much were you making when you made like at your highest paying job? And I was like, well, I was making a little bit over like $130,000. Right. And now like I'm definitely making way less than that. But I go home every day and I look around and I look at when I go to work and I go to the office and my co-founders live in these beautiful apartments, and whenever I go, like I literally have to fight back tears because I think like Wyzerr was started first of all from a very dark place, but it was started on a napkin. Like I drew the first designs for Wyzerr on a napkin. I took a picture, sent it to Stedman, and said, I think this is what it needs to look like. It needs to look like a game. And from then, like I drew more designs, and then Stedman and BK added color theory. And they were like, well, if it's gonna look like a game, it needs to have color. And they started so they started coloring things on like the whiteboard. But like, and I can remember those days very clearly. And then I look at where we're at now, and we're like, those ideas that started on a whiteboard and on a napkin at the time, it was just crazy ideas. Like they're like paying for our livelihood. And they're paying for the livelihood of 8 other people. Wow. So, like, it's kind of crazy.
Wow. So what tell us a few things that you're getting right with Wyzerr that you didn't with your first startup. What are some of the things that you are doing differently?
Well, number one is listening to customers. We're a feedback tool. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is that we don't go after so we really believe that Wyzerr's best fit is in the hotel industry, because it's service based, and there's a lot of hotels are already doing service and hospitality, like airlines, hotels, car rentals, cruises. But we haven't actually went to any hospitality companies. We've completely just been working on our inbound customers, and throughout the process we found out that the biggest need for Wyzerr is actually market research. So we started off as customer satisfaction just customer satisfaction surveys. Like, they were the easiest thing that we could do. There's a template that we could follow. We could do a lot of really cool, smart technology around customer satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So we would get these like huge meetings with these big enterprises, and we would pitch them customer satisfaction, and every single one would say, that's really great, but can you guys do market research? Because we're spending X amount of money on market research, and it's returning us 2 responses, it's returning us 10 responses, and things like that. And we're paying, like, one of our clients told us they were paying $70,000 and they only got like 2 responses. Oh, and another person, and I thought, okay, like, you know, there's something wrong here. Right. Then other people, like $50,000 and they got 7 responses, $120,000 they got 9 responses in like survey completions. And so, you know, and these were all market research surveys. And so we were kind of like, maybe we need to play in market research. Right. So yeah, so I mean, now we're in market research.
Wow. So. Yeah, those are some telltale signs of where you need to go. So, got a few minutes left. Tell us about your team. Who's on your team?
So Stedman Harper, who's my creative director, he's also my co-founder. He actually worked with me on my first startup with Suligan from the very beginning. So when we moved to Arkansas, we decided to have a focus group to kind of get feedback. So I guess I was doing it kind of right. So we were trying to get feedback on our new designs. And so we posted an ad on Craigslist, and Stedman actually responded to the ad, and he showed up. So that was like in 2012. And he told me this afterwards, but he was just really impressed by the fact that we were building a tech startup, because in Arkansas, you're basically trained to go work for Walmart or Tyson's Chicken. So Walmart is a huge employer there. Right. Everybody that goes through, especially if you go through University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, being so close to Walmart, literally in the same like area, that he felt like everyone was like brainwashed to believe that's what success looked like in Arkansas, was to go work for Walmart. Wow. And so when he saw us building a tech company, he kind of was like, I need to kind of just follow them around, or kind of work with them, because I think I can learn something, maybe start my own tech company. And I think he actually was trying to start a tech company, and didn't get any help from the university. Like, someone actually told him, you're too creative for Arkansas.
For Arkansas. Okay.
So they were like, that idea would never work here. It's just, you're too creative for Arkansas. And so, which is crazy now, because Arkansas wants him to come back to Arkansas, of course. So I met him about 4 years ago, and he now does like all of our creative designs. He's really matured and what's really cool about seeing is like how Stedman has matured into this role. Like, he's really comfortable in this role, and right. And so that's cool. And then my other co-founder, Bjorn Simmons, he's our chief strategy officer. So he handles like anything strategy related, whether that's sales, whether that's marketing, networking, partnerships. And he actually comes from a political background, so he used to be in Atlanta, worked as a chief of staff, and so he brings a lot of like just really great ideas on how to reach people, and kind of, politicians can sell anything. So.
right. And I had Bjorn on an earlier podcast, and we talked about Wyzerr, so y'all are familiar with that name. That's where it comes from. We had I forget what episode it was, but we had him on an earlier episode of the podcast. So is there any more? Or those three?
There's our two co-founders, and then so we have developers, and we have a couple that are, currently they're like all contractors. Okay. But they're not here in Philadelphia. But we're bringing in our own in-house. Like, we have 2 coming on March 1st. Okay. And so that's really close. And then we have a data scientist. We have a couple of designers, and then we have a ops manager.
Very cool. So,
and a huge sales team. Well, not huge. When I say huge, I just mean highly effective sales team.
So are you not hiring? Are you hiring right now?
We are hiring. We're looking for developers, of course. Okay. So, especially if you're in the mean stack, if you're familiar with the mean stack, right. We're definitely looking for you. Designers and I guess an ops manager, a project manager.
Okay, all right. So how can people find out more about you and about Wyzerr?
You can go to Wyzerr.com, so WYZERR.com. We're actively on social media, so you can find me. Most of my social media accounts are Love Natasia, Love Natasia. But definitely don't follow me, follow Wyzerr.
Okay. And what's next for you and for Wyzerr?
So currently we only work with large enterprise companies, so we have some really big contracts that are in the works, and so hopefully you'll see us in your local retailers and stuff soon. But I mean, that's really all it is like we're finishing out our first product, which is the Smart Form. They're basically surveys that look like games, but they are infused with artificial intelligence. So, the future of Wyzerr is surveys that really understand the consumer taking it and can rapidly change the questions based on what's being asked. And so people will often say, like, isn't that just skip logic or logic jumps? And no, it's not. It's actually Wyzerr's generating new questions without someone actually having to write the questions. And it's based on, a database of responses from previous customers. So there's a lot of really high tech stuff on the back end, but I think that Wyzerr's really great at intersecting design, technology, and data. And so to the user, it looks very simple, and it's the goal is to be seamless and feel very natural. But so that's what we're working on. In the immediate future, we'll be at South by Southwest, pitching at a couple of events, and we'll have a hosting suite, and come check us out.
All right. Great. Well, thank you for sitting down. We're in Centrifuge, right?
We're in the Brandery.
The Brandery. Thank you, Brandery, for allowing us to utilize your facilities here for this podcast. Thanks to all the organizers for our Future History Now, Candace Peters. Who else?
Bjorn Simmons, Stedman, the Mortar guys, so Alan, Derek, and William.
Right. Cynthia's doing it big, everybody.
Yeah.
This is where you need to come if you want to start a startup.
Yes.
Come here. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me.
So that is it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology Bit Tech Talk podcast. I want to thank our guest, Natasia. If you like what you heard tonight and you want to let us know, you have any suggestions or comments, email them to us at contactus@blacksintechnology.net. Join us next week, not in 2 weeks, but next week, for podcast episode number 90. We're on our way to 100.
Wow.
So we're going to have, our guest is going to be Camille Eddy. She's a mechanical engineering student at Boise State University, and she interned at Hewlett-Packard. So during her first year at Boise State, she helped plan and host a downlink with the International Space Station, where astronauts talk with Boise State students from space. She has also completed a NASA undergraduate research program as the leader of a student team who built a tool to help NASA plan their future manned mission to an asteroid. That is going to be pretty exciting. So join us next week, same time, same channel. And remember, tech yourself before you wreck yourself. Take care. Have a good night.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.